Hello, my beautiful cuddlebugs. Welcome to Ramblings of a Book Dragon, where we dive into the warmth of good books and unravel stories that feel like a literary hug. I'm Allie, your host, and I'm thrilled to embark on another cozy adventure with you. So grab a cup of your favorite beverage, snuggle into your cozy reading nook, and let's begin. I recently finished the Wolf Den trilogy written by Elodie Harper and performed by Antonia Beamish. The books are The Wolf Den, The House with the Golden Door, and The Temple of Fortuna. We follow a young Greek woman named Amara, who was sold into slavery after the death of her doctor father, and she was brought to Pompeii at 74 CE. Eruption of Mount Vesuvius was 79 AD, so we do have a few years of build-up to get to in the books before the eruption occurs. And what I really like about the books is that we do get to the eruption. It's not the end-all, be-all, but in the first one, it's a real deep dive into the life and times of what it would have been like to live in Pompeii. And in the ruins today, we see all of this graffiti, all these different quotes and things and sayings. The author would actually put those sayings at the beginning of each chapter. Our character, Amara, she was sold into slavery by her mother, bought unfortunately by a brothel called the Wolf Den. And we follow the lives of the women in the brothel, and while we do get the gritty reality of basically being at the bottom of the barrel of life as a slave in ancient Pompeii, we do also get that sisterhood. We do get that difference of life. I really like the way that the author took a look at this, because life in Pompeii is just so fascinating, especially since we have the remains of Pompeii from Vesuvius so perfectly preserved that it's like, okay, what was life like? It was just so interesting, and we see it from the life of the slaves, because the reason why it's called the Wolf Den is because in Latin it's a term for wolf. She-wolf is another term for prostitute. So Wolf Den, prostitute's home, a brothel. That's basically what they are. So they're called the she-wolves. The Wolf Den is actually based on a real place. A couple of the names that we see, we see Berenice, Victoria, and Cressa, were actual names that were found carved in at the Wolf Den. But then we also have Dido, who's a character, and also Amara, of course. But Amara and Dido are the only two in the Wolf Den who were actually sold into slavery. Berenice, Cressa, and Victoria were all basically born into slavery, and Victoria was actually tossed into a garbage heap, unfortunately, and then she was picked up and sold into slavery, which is something that she's really leaned into this role. And unfortunately, she's also the one who is very much in love with their master, unfortunately, with Felix, who's the one who bought each of the women, because he's the pimp. He really is just a very cruel man, and we slowly start to learn more about his story with this episode. But with Felix, he's like a cockroach. He just kept on coming back and coming back and coming back. He never let Amara go, and Amara is not her actual name. This was the name that Felix gave her, just like Dido was not her original name. She was kidnapped by pirates and then sold into slavery, unfortunately. So Amara and Dido, they become best friends. It's really clear to see that Amara, she was the doctor's daughter. She was very smart. She was going to Felix and saying like, hey, I can make you a lot more money than just working the streets as a prostitute. Felix is very much of the misogynistic, you're a woman, how can you possibly know anything? It's very much this antagonistic back and forth between the two of them. She is very smart. She really puts her brain to use, and in fact, she really knows how to take advantage of situations, because when there is a point where there is this great feast and she becomes friends with a male slave. He wants her to play this instrument that she knows how to play. She catches the eye of a wealthier man, and he invites her and Dido, because Dido was singing, to play at his house for some friends. So she's immediately like, oh yes, of course we can come. Another thing that she does is, one of Felix's side businesses besides being a pimp is he also does a lot of money lending. And so Amara watches this, and she realizes that there is actually a business for her own with women. And of course, why would Felix help women, and why would women go to Felix? He's a cockroach. He's very just, he's the scum of the earth. But Amara, she's like, she really wants to buy her freedom. So she's doing all these different things that she can do to kind of get herself out of this situation. So she starts up her own kind of money lending business under Felix. But the other thing that she does is she and Dido start to go to these to these wealthy men's houses. They start to perform. She plays this instrument. Dido sings. They do all these different acts, and eventually she catches the eye of Pliny the Elder, who is a great general of the Navy. He invites her to come with him to his place for a week, but it's actually really not sexual at all, and she really gets this taste for the finer things in life by being in his place for a week. But he doesn't touch her. He just asks her questions, which I guess which is really something that he was actually doing as part of his writings about natural history. He would hire courtesans for a period of time, ask them questions about their lives, and he really liked her because she has a really great speaking voice. So he wanted her to read books to him. Because of all this, she actually begged him to free her, buy her, and make her one of his secretaries. He was like, no, I can't do that. Why would I do that? You're going to go back. But he actually decides to introduce her to his nephew Rufus, a young man who's coming to visit. Rufus falls head over heels in lust with her. He has this great idea in his head about being the great protector, the great benefactor, the rescuer of Amara, because he sees her as this weak little bird, and that's something that really catches his eye with her, that she is weak. She needs protecting, and he takes her to the theater, and that's something that he sees in the plays. That he sees this as this great love story. Turns out in House with the Golden Door that he's really just not a good man as well, but at least he's now her patron. Goes to Felix and is like, I don't want her to do all the sex work stuff all the time. So he pays to keep her out of it 5 out of 7 days or 6 out of 7 days or something like that. So she moves out of the main area of the wolf den and she moves upstairs. And now what I thought was really cool about this book is that instead of it being all up, we don't get the graphicness. We know what's going on. We know the situation that these men are very, very the men that are coming to visit this place are generally probably not the best. They have to go out fishing to bring these men back, and they have their little cells, and the cells are not very comfortable. And the main focus of the book is not on the fact that they're sex workers. We know that that's what they are. We know that's what they do, is their daily lives, going to the baths, going to the markets, going to see the gladiatorial fights. We have a day at the arena. We see all of these different things with them. They just walk outside. They protect each other. They have their sisterhood. It could have been a very titillating book where it was focused on the sex work aspect. And we know that's part of one of the things that really helps Amara with this daily life and with Rufus is she becomes friends with one of the top dog courtesans in the area. Her name is Drusilla, and she is free and she owns her own home. Drusilla kind of takes her under her wing. She helps Amara to convince Rufus to free her. That is the next big step in this whole arrangement, is she can't just continue to be Felix's slave and prostitute. She has to belong to Rufus specifically and only. That is what has to happen next. We see this happening where Rufus is kind of just saying oh yeah, I need to talk to my family about it, all this other stuff that's going on. But the idea is that he wants to make a big spectacle. That's his big thing, is making spectacles out of all of this. It's kind of starting to become tense in the book because there are, of course, other brothels. One of Rufus's enemy pimps, there is a fight. One of the other girls gets killed. Her eye gets taken out in the fight because of this. She was one of the more beautiful girls, and because her eye was taken out, pimp killed her. And so now we're starting to develop the idea of a gang war between these different pimps. It all comes to a head at Saturnalia, where this guy attacks Rufus, and then unfortunately unfortunately died. There's a crowd that's forming because they don't realize that it's an actual fight. They think it's part of the games. They think it's part of all the action and events. And unfortunately, Dido gets killed. And it's right at this point, with all this craziness, that Rufus wants to make a big spectacle saying, I am freeing you. I am naming you. And it's not just me that's paying for you. It's Pliny the Elder who's paying for you too. So now your name is Plinia Amara, because that's what happens when you are freed. You're named with the person who freed you. And unfortunately, Dido was caught up in this. Dido died because of being stabbed in this process. Amara just threw a fit. She was upset, screaming, raging at Felix. It was a very much intense way to end the book, but end the episode here for right now, and I'm going to continue with the next episode of book 2, House with the Gold Door. And so please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Goodbye.